Welcome to She Blaze, where we're bringing you cannabis culture from a woman's point of view. And as always, here to elevate the cannabis industry. I'm one of your hosts, Ice Dawson, cannabis socialite.
And I am Dasheeda Dawson, the weed head.
Hi, sis.
Hey, sis. Is that we always kick things off with the high of the week. And my high of the week is actually a really big high, especially considering some of the WTF we're about to get into. And that is a successful Cannabis Day at Council for the City of Portland's cannabis program. Girl, I had 8 speakers, 60 slides, and 3 ordinances that passed. I really did feel just incredibly blessed to work with the team that I did. We ran up that hill to get it done, and then we came through ready, and I was just very excited to see the work that we've done over the last 2 years start to come to life for people through video. And yeah, we also had 2 videos in there. It was a show, and we came through, showed up and showed out.
Okay. Well, because I don't have a high of the week and my intro was whack, I'm actually going to run that back and give it to you one more again. Okay, Dasheeda, we live and we winged that, but I'm about to give it to him one more time. On today's episode of She Blaze, cannabis CEOs are making millions while consumers are losing millions purchasing their weed, okay? Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, big Cali brands are settling with the IRS for millions. So I just had to run that back for the people because...
But that's also why my high of the week is so important, because I do think that to have jurisdictions actually doing cannabis regulation with all of this in mind, because I want to talk about it. You know, this is my therapy. So I'm like, girl, we got to get it out. But this week was a successful week. It was a lot of work, but it also showed that people aren't very intentional in their jobs in the government. I've only been in the role just over 2 years, and the amount of work that we were able to display after a very, very suspect 2020 audit in early January, I'm just again pleased with the outcome, the equity outcomes, but also just to prove, right, like that the government can move with intention and integrity and transparency and equity. And so those are some of the principles of the city of Portland. And yeah, girl, like, let's talk about it, because it frustrates me to see that it could be one way, right? And instead we're seeing what you just described.
Yes, with this infancy industry. Mm-hmm. And this infancy industry is such a baby that the federal government wants to help birth it. And so we're going to go into hot topic number 1, where we talk about this subcommittee hearing that was led by Cory Booker, who is also the only person of color on the committee, I believe. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And honestly, it is interesting because we've been waiting for so long. It's a crime and terrorism committee. So, I mean, they did terrorize us with the way their drug policies are happening still to this day. So I can understand why the committee wanted to see it first, but ultimately, I have mixed feelings about it right now, because they did some interesting things by him explaining why it's so important, why cannabis needs to be descheduled, why it needs to be decriminalized, why people need to be let out of jail, and Black and brown people were the main ones suffering from it. Mm-hmm. He even brought in people in favor, like this man who was formerly incarcerated about it, who definitely has done his political and show rounds about it. He also brought in someone from the law enforcement community talking about how this would be better resources for the police to do something else other than cannabis. Mm-hmm. But they also heard from the ops, a senator named Tom Cotton. Yes, his name is Tom Cotton in 2022. From Missouri, and he's just really not feeling the vibes of cannabis. And last I checked, Missouri had a medical marijuana market.
A very thriving one as well. So yeah, girl, I mean, but the ops have been out, and they are typically Republican, and it is usually still steeped in a lot of racism and implicit bias and fear.
Absolutely. And basically the main reason why he expunged he like opposed this is because he feels like it would expunge or wipe clean all of the criminal records of illegal alien traffickers.
Yeah,
The
I
only
mean,
traffickers I know is these people.
facts. I mean, at the end of the day, we're gonna have to pay attention to these hearings, because even if this bill does not pass, it is setting you up for what the ops are really planning to use for their competition, when they, negotiate against us. And so right now the story is all about bringing back the war on drugs 2.0. The story is all about having the same rhetoric over and over again, around the harm of all this crime, when in fact the crime actually is, like you said, and the terror is what was happening to communities, largely communities of color, Black and Hispanic communities and indigenous communities, that were being stripped of resources and over policed, and this being the biggest tool to do so. And so it's in the right Judiciary Subcommittee. Booker is the right person to introduce it there. But to your point, I don't think they're talking about the war on drugs as a previous act of terror from the government to communities. They're talking about it here because this is where a lot of the biggest opposition comes from, as you talk about expunging crimes that typically would have been discussed in this subcommittee for like cannabis possession and trafficking and whatever, and figuring out the federal laws around it. So this is a place where they're going to have to undo a lot of what is already in place for quote unquote federal crimes related to cannabis. Okay, it looks like we've lost Ice. This is going to happen, I guess, at least 3 times in our season, because we are live. It's always so hard. And this is our first episode where we are separated for the first time, I think, not in the same space. Your mic is muted, Ice. You're back, though. I think the heat in New York is probably causing mad drama with the internet. I'm in a sunny Portland and my internet is doing well. But yeah, this first hot topic has been basically showing an update of the CAOA. We are definitely going to get into it a little bit deeper to ensure that folks know what is actually being discussed. But this Judiciary Subcommittee is all about looking at that expungement, looking at some of the social justice components as it relates to this bill. And I think Booker came out swimming. Now, one thing I will say that people have asked the Cannabis Regulators of Color Coalition is that we really don't like some of the intimation that all of a sudden Booker now is pro-safe. I think he's pointing out that there are some real broken things in the banking aspects of cannabis, but I don't think that he all of a sudden has like switched and flipped. I think we definitely appreciate that he understands that the finances are important, but there are some nuances to it, and SAFE can't do what those things he called out. It can't fix it as is, and so there's going to have to be some sort of amendments in order for us to actually see SAFE do what people are hoping it does for equity.
Y'all, it is 1:00 over here. Okay. This is why they tell me don't touch the tech. Can you hear me? Can you confirm?
We can hear you. Yay, you're back.
Right now.
You're back. Yes.
Did you hear?
Hello?
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
All right.
You're back and we're live, and this is the beauty of being live. But I think we're ready to move on to hot topic number 2, because that is definitely some hot tea, girl.
Yes, it is time to move on to hot topic number 2, which is about a big California company brand. Okay. And the tea is that they owe the IRS millions. Okay, so let's get into it. So State House Holdings, which is formerly known as Harberside. Now, for all the people that are following us from New York, y'all know the tea, honey. And Harberside is a very old cannabis brand as far as medical and adult use, you know.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so the tea is that they basically settled a IRS tax bill of $22 million. And guess how much they settled it for? 5.8 million, which is so less than what they owe. And this is from taxes from 2007 to 2012. And we didn't find out about it until 2020. I'm like, what in the Donald Trump is happening here?
Oh my gosh, but you're right. It's like this is that type of business management that we're just like, what? Here's the thing though, Harborside has been in the industry, like you said, based out of Oakland, one of the largest brands in California. Has constantly been pointed to. The D'Angelo brothers are the people that are considered to be quote unquote, real founders and pioneers. And this dates back to when they were still in charge. It's not like it's something after it was purchased. It went through several acquisitions. And I could see if it was like from 2015 to 2019, but we're talking about 2007. We're talking about like a whole teenage child at this point that you would have at this point if you had a child at 07. So I don't know. I'm not surprised, but I'm also, this is why we have to be questioning people's motives when they are separating from a company. We've seen acquisitions and mergers happen multiple times in the industry. We've seen renames. And I think that this is an exact example of how, the industry can be very deceptive to the consumers because you're thinking you're going to the biggest dispensary in Oakland and, some people say in California for the longest time. And in fact, you are in some ways helping them accomplish tax fraud because you are paying for their product and they're not paying their taxes. All those years, I also have to just really point out the obvious is that anywhere else with people of color doing something like this, you would be in prison. You're not negotiating a dollar amount. I guess there are some things that I really get frustrated about because we're talking about it in a crime and terrorism judiciary subcommittee, but then this is the legal entity for however long. And I'd also talk about the fact that the IRS is taking that money, whether it's 22 million or 5.5 million, it's millions. And there's still people in jail and there's still a lot to be reconciled. And that to me is all part of this story that I saw that I was like, yo, WTF, like what the F?
Well, they definitely taking your tax money out the purchase of your Harborside, okay? They was not like, oh, at the time, because it was 2007 to 2012, at the time, they was not being like, oh, tax-free today day. No, they was giving you taxes the whole entire time to turn around and not even pay their own. And then, we talk about 280E so heavy, and it's like, obviously, 280E isn't as terrible if IRS is still like, I'm gonna get my coin, but instead of you owing us 22 million, you're gonna give us 5 point something, and you're gonna pay $50,000 a month for a couple months and make that money up.
116 months to be exact. I mean, the reality is that the IRS is a bill collector and bill collectors cut deals. You get settlement deals all the time. So that's not necessarily unusual. What I think is unusual is that the IRS wasn't necessarily interested in how is this not criminal activity in some way? And again, I'm not trying to push that because I think anytime we push criminal or enforcement, you see that racial bias and how it happens. And so it's not going to be in our best interest to say that, but I'm just always curious. Like I asked the question, and if you're doing it from 2007, there were people in California that were operating that have literally spent time in a federal prison simply for operating a regular licensed business. And I'm talking about during that era of the 07s, before 2010, and before we started seeing adult use market, in the early stages of the medical market market in Cali. To be truthful, what we're finding now, and it's all going to be in documentaries, I'm sure, is that we're going to be looking back and watching a Netflix documentary of the cannabis industry and all of the corruption, all of the crazy, all of the what the F's that happened leading up to eventually conversations about equity finally starting in 2020 for real.
Well, I think this is just really like definitely going to be that. But the reason too they probably don't have to do jail time is because they went into their little battle in court to, bring their taxes down. They separated from the original leaders of it, and the leaders aren't necessarily being held responsible, but there is this explosion of cannabis activism right here. And maybe that's why, they don't want to go to jail for not paying their taxes. So being a cannabis activist could definitely help.
Ooh, I mean, you done said a lot. And the reality is that these are strategies. When you work in the nonprofit space, you certainly are dealing with different things than normal. And so I certainly feel like the normal, I would say, for-profit business. And some of that is the taxes. So you're absolutely right. That is the exemption of a 501c3. That is the exemption process, is about taxes. So I'm not going to say that's what it is because it's all alleged. They did do a good job with their negotiation, getting down to that settlement. This is, again, to me, the U.S. government proving that money talks and the BS continues to walk, right, and continue to happen. And so I'm going to continue, I'm just going to continue to watch it. But I think that we are seeing chess moves in the moment, and it is indicative of what is not really afforded to Black and brown people in the industry.
Absolutely. And as you talk about money talking, the next hot topic got a lot of money talk up in there, okay? Cash talk. Cash talk. And we're talking about the top cannabis CEOs releasing how much they're making. Now, we love seeing this in all other industries. We love the 30 under 30, 40 under 40 Forbes list, the most richest rapper list. We love those things. People just gobble it up. And like average mainstream, cannabis loves those things too. And so they released this list. They released the list last year. We talked about it on She Blaze last year. If not, go check it out. Season 5. But they released it again. And these are for the multi-state operators of public companies. So they have to have like some IPO things going on really to even release that information, because the MSOs that's not on IPO, they're not releasing that info. I'm telling you, because
they don't need to.
The guys before. But basically, sorry, my internet is still giving in and out. But basically, there have been some CEOs that moved in different levels on this list. And so let's talk about it. I'll let you jump in real quick so you could give your thoughts on, CEOs and what they're supposed to make, how we should be, really looking at the list, what we should be thinking about. The list breaks down how much they make, the stock options they have, and bonuses and compensation.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you can give what you think CEOs should make. What we know in big companies, whether it's cannabis, CPG, pharmaceutical, is that most of these companies are very top heavy when it comes to the cost of personnel. CEOs and senior executives are making millions, while at the lowest levels in the industry, at the consumer facing levels, often in the industry, you're not seeing the even a living wage. So this is not just cannabis issue, right? Like even when I worked at Target, there were people who were picketing in our headquarters about this, and that pay equity gap is huge, and it's something that we're looking at for all the big companies. What is the percentage, right, or the multiplier, I should say, of the CEO salary versus the lowest paid person in the company? And a lot of these companies have multipliers that are insane, and we're still trying to figure out what exactly they're doing. Now, for some of the bigger companies, and the way that I run a business and have been in leadership, I'm hustling, and so I do not want to say that there are not CEOs really busting their butt. But when we talk about these cannabis companies and we're looking at some of these things and the experiences that I've had as a consultant, I will say that sometimes some of these CEOs are the least knowledgeable in the room as it pertains to cannabis and competency around science, social justice, or culture. They drag down the supply chain, often a part of the reason why the end product that is given to consumers is poor. And so they also are finding themselves in situations where they're not managing their money well. To even see a man CEO here, no matter how many times we've had multiple ones, it still seems crazy that they would make a list like this when they've had so much in media about their mismanagement of money, needing to do re-raises in order for them to pay for things, and people still giving them 20 million here, another 100 million here. Meanwhile, Black and brown people can't get even a million without feeling like you're giving away half of your company, without getting it completely lower value. Like, girl, don't get me started. I could do 3-4 episodes on just this, you know.
Right. Well, you know, it just reminds me of like, why are we asking for safe banking when safe banking doesn't even actually work in regular life? It's like, why are we like allowing these CEOs to make millions off an industry that truthfully should not be as top heavy, to be honest, because they still have supply chain issues. They're still figuring out product packaging, and, you know, licensing. All these things are still happening, millions. But every time I go in the dispensary, I got to put in a tip at the tip jar. Like, y'all not even making $20 an hour. Y'all just came on in 2018, bruh. Like, y'all just opened up in 2018 and y'all not even making $20 an hour, and you asking me for a tip? Hell no.
It is confusing for the consumer. We are confused because, let me be real, the action that happens at most dispensaries, not all of them, they call it a bud tender, but it is by far, like, it is not a bartending experience. You don't sit at the bar there and keep choosing a new thing for someone to keep going and bringing back. It is very similar to going to a Walgreens, a CVS, and you looking and you need a charger for the back that's behind the cashier, and the cashier turn around and go get it for you, especially in states where it's prepackaged already. So the tip jar is, again, something a little bit confusing for people because of the name we call people who are working at that level, but also it's an indication of how poorly those people are being paid. And that is where the diversity lies in the industry right now, at the industry worker level. And it's good to see some labor agreements happening on the East Coast. That's not the case here on the West Coast as much. And it's also good to see that we're shining a light on the disparities, because to me, it's a shame to see millions and millions of dollars being put into, what is this, 10 to 15 people, and there's still so many people that are in jail or dealing with collateral consequences because of cannabis. And then the people who do get the privilege of working in the industry that are people of color, disabled, that are historically excluded, they aren't the ones that are reaping the benefits of the industry. It's still a trickle-down effect, and that Reaganomics never worked for us. So
not Reaganomics, child. Okay, AP, that's what y'all need to put in y'all style book guidelines. No, just
yeah, that's Reaganomics.
I
mean, I know I'm dating myself, but any economist, when we study how things were, this whole trickle down effect that came from that era where big companies got bigger at the top and they were squeezing people at the bottom. And it was like, well, as long as we continue to feed the top, it'll trickle down. And it never did. So, like, let's not repeat history. It doesn't work for us. Historically excluded means, first of all, that funnel ain't even in our bottlenecks, right? It's not in our communities. That funnel is still for other communities, as if you're lucky to get to those communities.
Right.
It's happening again, and we have to try to pay attention enough to figure out how are we, holding these public companies accountable. I think you mentioned when we were initially talking about this, you're like, you don't see Weed Maps on the list. And I'm like, they're a publicly traded company and it's cannabis based.
Weed Maps did not make the list, and they're publicly traded, and they actually, yes, they don't necessarily have cannabis products, which makes them something where they're everywhere, but they are direct cannabis company. They probably make their P&L probably looks better than a lot of these other companies that we will get into in a second, P&L, because they all asking for investments, all these holdings, they floating through the what is this even called thing, you know what I'm saying? So we can look right. Like if you want to make investment, you buying they penny stocks, you better go look at their investment portfolio that they gotta have on their website in order to be a public company.
Right. I mean, I think that's why I love when you start digging here, because you really uncovered the real tea. A lot of people look at what brands a company may sell, but don't know how to dig into the parent company for those brands. And again, doesn't just happen in cannabis, it happens elsewhere. But the fact of the matter is, in cannabis, there's a little bit more like surreptitious like activity, meaning like they're changing names hoping you forget what was previously done. Like you said, Harberside is really the company that is paying back taxes, but they now have a new name. They've gone through a couple of acquisitions. The new owners are hoping you will, wipe the slate clean. To me, that's like not wanting to teach critical race theory, right? Like it's sort of one of those things where you're trying to tabula rasa the history, but the history is what the history is. And that transparency and how much did government participate in it, to me, is something we're going to have to rectify also. It's like the past harms, and then let's talk about the harms that happened in the first 10 years, 10, 15 years of the industry. These salaries, I think they're part of the harms.
These salaries are definitely the harms. And, I'm about to start naming off companies, and some people are going to be like, well, where's that? What's that called? Da, 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 da. Don't worry. I looked up a few of these because I was confused too. I'm like, they barely even opened their doors for a year. Okay, so the first company that racked in number one basically is, forgive me, you guys, Verano Holdings.
Yes, Verano Holdings. Mm-hmm.
Yes, they are. A lot of their stuff is based out of Illinois, which we know just came online. They really are just awarding their licensing. People are being able to procure items, but not so much. Then coming in at number 2 is Ascend Wellness, which is in New York based kind of company.
And Ascend was in a little bit of some drama with some acquisition stuff. So,
Of course, they are always in drama because they trying to gobble up all these licenses. You can't even tell me the date of which the license you got to reapply.
So, we talked about it, right? That was a big company in Massachusetts that was getting in trouble because they had acquired a company and they weren't doing the licensing renewals as they were supposed to.
Yes. And then the third is Judiciary Holdings. Now, I always was confused about this one because I'm like, it sounds Asian, like it's giving me POC vibes, and it's not. Like, none of these people got black or brown people that work in their top offices. I just being honest about that. And they are based out of Florida, and they acquired all these places in Illinois, Massachusetts. They have a lot of places in Pennsylvania. They are eating up Pennsylvania. Coming in at number 4 is Kim Rivers, which is the only woman on the list. And she bumped up 4 levels.
Yeah, she was lower last year, but she was on that top 10 list last year. Only woman again.
I mean, who knew that all you had to do was let your husband go to jail for embezzlement and you become on the top 5 most paid CEOs in cannabis?
I mean, girl, the shade was like, it came down very quickly on her. But the reality is, like, that's what it was. I mean, we heard what he said, what he got convicted of. A lot of people, like on LinkedIn, I see defending her, and I'm not coming after her, but I'm coming after the truth. Is yes, you were in bed literally with somebody who has said on the record as part of the testimony or the evidence rather against him that y'all knew what you were doing. You knew how you were going to corner the market. The market got cornered, and now Trulieve is one of the largest brands in the country, and you're one of the highest paid CEOs. It isn't like, it don't take a rocket science to connect those two dots. It really doesn't. But again, everything is alleged, and especially when it comes to her.
He in jail.
He in jail. I'm saying when it comes to her, everything is alleged. Everything is alleged when it comes to her. She had no charges pushed against her, and she was never convicted. And being married, she didn't have to testify against her husband. So we don't have anything on the record that she said. We just have his tapes, because y'all gotta go back. If you ain't watched us or listened to us, go back to episodes in season 3, maybe. I mean, because we're on season 6 now, and this happened a while ago. But FBI was undercover with her husband, so they got him on tape saying some pretty inflammatory comments about their approach to being able to be in the market that was developing, the new market for Florida. And so, yeah, we should talk about it. Like, to me, I think it's sad because sometimes we're like, well, she's the only woman and you want to support women. But listen, I don't want a woman to be there and it's based in BS.
Right. Well,
I'm not supporting that either.
A lot of people in order to become the only woman, and based out of Florida. Florida's not saying Florida's not a real market, because them Floridians don't come eat me. But I'm gonna say that Florida is not Arizona market medical marijuana. Okay.
Oh no.
So she's making multi-millions on a market that's like trash.
Yes, because we've said this before, it's pretty much run like a cartel. It's like the government's version of a cartel, and how they are colluding and controlling the market. There is no diversity at all. The start of the market was suspect. It is a medical only market. It is not adult use. So this is happening even with not adult use. But Trulieve is also on a mission to move around. They have licenses that they've acquired now in Georgia. And there's definitely, a lot of stories of things that they've done good, but then you dig into it, and then there's things that have been poor. They've gone into predominantly Black communities and bought up everything that had back taxes and really undervalued and underutilized land. They've set up facilities there that does bring jobs. So you're excited because you're bringing a little bit of wealth back into the community. But it's not generational wealth for those community members.
We still got to tip them. It's a job. They're bringing things where we're still tipping them.
Yes, it's a job. And while she's making $500,000 as her base, and then all of these millions as her stock options for her company, there are still people who are struggling that are working in one of those facilities that's basically, making minimum wage at best. And we know minimum wage in Georgia and in Florida ain't that good. So it's not New York, is not $15 an hour. So here's the thing. I'm not trying to throw the most shade. I know that it's hard work to be a CEO. These numbers also, can I just say, Ice, when we look at it, there's also that split, right? Like, how are we doing on the base? What's the bonus? And what's the actual equity? When I see most of the numbers, like for the guy from what is it? I'm sorry. The guy from Verano Holdings.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. As far as rounding out the top 5 is Planet 13, which is like the only stock that's been solid. But the breakdown of the salaries is the salary versus a bonus, because you get a bonus when you sign on, I guess. And then a lot of things are stock plans, stocks, and incentive plans. So if you do help bring legalization to a state, that is and then get licensed, that is the incentive.
Yes, and not every bonus is a sign-on bonus. Like, let's also be very critical about it. Bonuses are part of like your percentage of your salary, based on how the performance of your portfolio, your P&L, how profitable you are. And so, yeah, it is actually very alarming to me when I see bonuses like the one for Jushi Holdings that's like $2.1 million in a bonus. I mean, his salary is under Truly Kim Rivers $500,000, just under that, which in of itself is a lot. But the fact is, what are you getting a $2.1 million bonus for? Like no company has done that well yet. Whether they've done out the gate for our sales, you've acquired, but you haven't necessarily been out there selling and getting market share on true brand innovation and product. And you don't do it necessarily equitably. So what's the bonus for? So I see those numbers and I start to get real nervous. And then the other thing that I get nervous about is the stock number, because it's based on the valuation of the company. The Verano Holdings guy has the lowest salary base and one of the lowest bonuses that looked more like CPG in the early years of your senior executive. You get a $200,000 bonus, but his stock is over 15 million in value. Is that because he put his own money? Is it because also Verano Holdings is overvalued? And we know that that's happening. So I just think it's interesting when we see the breakdown of where the expectations is still a lot of money being made and it's still too top heavy, but it's based on a lot of things that make me give a little bit of a side eye.
Absolutely. I feel like a lot of the numbers are definitely topping the 1, 2, and 3 because they are giving a lot of their stock options, and people are finding out with stocks just in general that you think you're cute going on Acorn or Robinhood procuring these stocks, and these stocks, when it's time to cash out like the casino, you are not getting your money back. You are not getting the money that you invested in it, because a lot of them are inflated, to your point, and they're kind of like ghost stocks, right? These people have to get paid out first, and then you get paid out after Robinhood, Acorn, whatever. So, that's why I don't always play the stock game, especially not in cannabis, because one minute we talking about Verano Holdings and then they could be Alfria the next day. I don't even know.
You're right. The names change. There's acquisitions and mergers, and they're moving around the money and not caring so much about the people.
Absolutely, moving around the money. The only people really, there's only a few different people, is like Planet 13 Holdings. Like, I'd be like, oh, Planet 13 dispensary. I could at least, link them together. As far as the top 3, I did went through a rabbit hole of figuring out, okay, who's these brands? What's the retail? Are they just gobbling up people's licensing, or are they birthing it from scratch? It is a mess. But the mess is that they is making $1 million minimum.
Absolutely. Another thing that you pointed out that I thought was interesting is, in addition to Weedmaps not being on the list, the parent company, which has a Black CEO, and again, the first Black CEO of a publicly traded cannabis company, and not making the list this year. And again, it could be good, it could be bad. On the one hand, like, again, I know I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. I want parity. I want to see that there is equity. So if they're Black CEOs, why aren't they on this list? But at the same time, I do think this list is egregious and is an example of the top heavy, really money capitalistic focus of the industry, as opposed to patient focused, consumer focused, product focused, solution focused aspects of the industry. Because the truth is, like you said at the top of the show, we giving these people millions in their salary, but the consumer is losing millions buying their weed because the weed ain't good.
The weed is not good. No. Well, we did not see the parent company. There are also a few. I can't wait till you guys check out the list in the bio description after the show, because there are even some CEOs with their little public company that was like, FUCK, you people, I'm not even giving y'all my salary. Just know it's going to be blank, blank, blank. This is my stock option.
Wow. Or maybe they only have stock options. there might be some CEOs that chose to not have a salary and only have stock options. That's a thing. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. But the reality is that you also, to your point, when you're a private company, and that's the majority of cannabis companies, you don't have to say your salary. You don't have to disclose. In this case, we have to see the back end, and you get to actually put together lists like this. It's disclosing, though, to me, the egregious capitalistic nature of the cannabis space. And a little bit, again, a tale of two worlds. It's like people are in jail. People are fighting for their parental rights. And you making $500,000 and selling trashy weed that may or may not pass testing. Like, I'm not sure if it makes sense to me.
Listen, this is just giving me real Tom Girardi, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills vibes. Even when they opt out of the option to get a salary, it's like, why? Because you bought a PJ on the company card.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking real tea right now, sis. I don't know if they're ready for it because you watch all the shows and you know all the drama. But you're right. We probably need a little not Real Housewives of Cannabis, but something like, the real CEOs of cannabis, if you will, because they are definitely doing the PJing. And you're right. It's a little concerning. But it's all of it's going to come to light. It's just a matter of how. And I think advocates, real ones that want equity, these are the things you still have to be talking about. You cannot be turning a blind eye about it. You're holding people accountable. It's not just because they gave a contract to a couple of Black and brown influencers. You holding people accountable, it means that you're looking at how they're paying their CEOs.
Listen, if you give me a couple $1 million contract, I might also be able to negotiate the terms of my my loyalty to the people. But they be giving you $10,000 and you think it's doing something. It's like, first of all, you making $1 million. Okay, you making $500,000. At least give me $100,000, $50,000. But you about to sell out for $10K, boy. Times are hard.
You are facts when you say that. Like that's what I want influencers to know is like you literally selling your soul for $300 worth of free weed and a trip to go to the dispensary and some good content. But this man, primarily man, this white man is making millions. And you're the reason that he's able to still do that in earnest. So it's like, we don't understand our value. The culture is what's going to win over, and you giving the culture the pennies. Yeah, I'm not with it.
But we will go down a rabbit hole reading these people, okay? Especially because everybody's always looking for sponsorship in cannabis, and they give you a couple little $1,000, and we supposed to be in loyalty to the company forever, whatever. So that's why I'm like, let's not keep going down this rabbit hole, because child, I could really get in trouble. I can hear Imani right now. So let's go on to our main topic, which is how people are losing millions of dollars working with their terrible cannabis. First, I want to talk about testing and drug testing. We're just going to jump into that just real quick because I want to put this on the radar for people because this may hurt cannabis at some point. So basically, in Louisiana, you guys, it always got to be one of those states. In Louisiana, this woman got fired from her job because she was using CBD oil for migraines, and they drug tested her. It was like one of those federal contract kind of jobs. They tested her, and basically she came up positive for THC in her drug test, but she already disclosed to them she was using CBD. It is a product that is one of the ones that are quote unquote compliant. And they, Blue Cross Blue Shields was like, thanks, but no thanks, you gotta go. So she sued them. She sued them, and she is still suing them. And so basically the company Blue Cross Blue Shield was like, all right, well, we're gonna try to shut this down before it even go to court. But Louisiana was like, don't, no, y'all can't do that because we want to obviously set the president or presidents or whatever to make this like known throughout the states. This is what you do when CBD comes up in a drug test and you need to fire that person. And so basically they try to shut it down, saying that, she wasn't a qualified individual because she failed her drug test. Louisiana said, no, she is qualified, and we have questions still. So we're taking this to court. She's qualified. It doesn't specifically says that she has to pass the drug test to actually be able to do the function of her job. And there is more information that needs to come around this positive drug testing for only CBD oil, which is legal in all 50 states.
Okay, first of all, I want to just shout out that I'm wearing my science shirt on purpose, because this is going to be science heavy as we talk about any type of testing. At the end of the day, drug testing is all about that Delta 9 THC. And so some would say, well, if she's taking a CBD product, how did she even test positive? Well, first of all, if you even just look at the cannabidiol molecule against THC, there is, at the blind's eye, it looks like you're taking one of those IQ tests to say, show me the differences, because it is hard to see it, even at from looking at the molecular structure of it. But that isn't the reason why she tested positive. Likely, if she's using a full spectrum hemp derived product, there's still THC there. It's up to 0.3%, but that THC does exist. And if you're doing it over time, you're building up some level of THC in your body. And so when you take a test, because some of these tests, especially the employment drug tests, they have very, very sensitive tests where you have the lowest nanogram or whatever of THC. They want to know if you even you was in the room with somebody else smoking it. Real talk. It is one of those things where it is a very small amount that will make you have a positive result. Now, one thing she keeps doing is she's saying, I was only taking CBD. That does protect her federally, but she's actually missing out, because this is Louisiana, on some of the potential protection she could have if she was actually a medical cannabis patient. Louisiana has a full medical program. They added flower last year, but it's mostly oils. And yeah, if she had a medical card, similar if she had a prescription for opioid and she was going to test positive, theoretically, because of HIPAA laws, she should be protected, theoretically, if she has that recommendation and her card. And in theory, the Louisiana courts should want to protect them because they want to protect the medical program. There's a lot of laws about protections there too. But we know how it is. And ultimately, I think it's still canophobia all up and down in government. And it's always about having to show and prove. You're right about the precedent, because it could go left real quick if they start to dig into it and actually do rule in favor of the company, because now you're going to have other companies thinking that they can do this. But it also is a really big leap forward if a state like Louisiana rules in favor of this woman.
Right. Exactly. But this makes me nervous because Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, these states aren't, their courts, I know people are really, really upset about the Supreme Court, and they should be. But these are the courts that start this shit.
Yes, you're right. No, listen, it does start at the state level. We're not paying enough attention. We've talked about on previous episodes that Mississippi Supreme Court absolutely is part of the reason why they overturned a voter's choice on legalization, and then a year later put in the legislator's choice on legalization, and then made it so that nobody can ever bring a bill again like that to the floor through voters' ballot. So it's yes, we see the corruption. We see you. And, we got to call it out. So I'm with you. I wouldn't want that to be necessarily the sword I die on going to court. You mentioned you would settle.
Yes, that's why they didn't dismiss the case, right? They wanna rule on this. They thirsty and they we already did the little Roe versus Wade. We got another thing to focus on. And we no, this lady talking about CBD. Somebody hire this lady. Settle for a certain amount of money, so somebody go hire this lady because she is taking cannabis down the wrong rabbit hole, child. I'm telling y'all. And
it's the wrong state.
It really got me nervous.
Right. You're right.
It does have me nervous.
I'm a pray, but it's the wrong state. This is something that you want to do in a state like maybe New York, where New York City has changed the testing requirements, but the whole state hasn't yet necessarily. It is the wrong state, and I am worried too. But we're gonna have to keep people up to date.
Right. And now this got me down a rabbit hole because I'm like, oh my God, this is happening in court. We talking about testing, employment, all these things. I need to learn more about what's happening with all this testing stuff. And then, girl, the streets lit up with what is happening with testing. So first, let's get into Arkansas, y'all. Yes. So Arkansas has a RICO charge for 4 of their leading licenses. Arkansas does have medical cannabis, y'all. Don't look at me like that, for real. And they've had it for a while.
Yes, they
Because I
have.
mean, sometimes, I think people forget, like, there are mad other places that we don't always talk about that have medical cannabis and have medical cannabis better than Georgia, Minnesota, South Carolina. Like, Arkansas got flower.
Yes, and Walmart, who is based in Arkansas, is definitely trying to figure out how they're going to have Walmart weed. Best and believe they're trying to figure out cultivation. The minute that they started looking at cannabis legalization in any type in Arkansas, Walmart was in the mix. So, but now what you're talking about, the top licenses is doing some crazy ish. So it's like your Walmart weed might not be tested properly.
It might not be tested properly. And your Walmart weed might, like, you wouldn't even know it's Walmart weed because how the holding companies are set up is really like how they set up different, like, stock companies. You know what I'm saying? If you watch Netflix documentaries on stock, you know what I'm saying? And how they set up these companies is you would never know. How would you know? And so let's get into it. And basically, my whole computer is freezing, so bear with me, you guys. I'm sorry. I'm not usually the one that's doing the production. I am merely talent right here, but okay.
Well,
So
I do think that your internet has been struggleville today, but it is what it is. We are live. Everybody knows, if you've been following us along this ride for 6 seasons, you know how we do. I remember rewatching season 1, and I'm in a Starbucks, and you can hear every order happening behind me as we were on the road so much in the early seasons. We did an episode out of the car, y'all, to try to bring in the tea. So we bring the tea whether or not the internet is allowing us to be great. But I got a lot to say about the Arkansas thing. And I know that you initially, when we first started talking about it, you were, really referencing the fact that they were this, like, really large licenses, and that they were actually doing a whole, like, bait and switch where they were jacking up the THC levels of their product with some sort of partnership with the testing facilities. And that to me was like, that's wrong on so many levels.
Yeah. Yes. So there were 3 residents of Arkansas that brought together a federal racketeering lawsuit against 4 different licensed medical marijuana, which basically the allegations of the suit is that these companies conspired to inflate THC levels on their labels for their products sold to the different companies. Now, the different people. Now, the companies in question are Bold. There's a cultivation company, a natural state. But get this. My bell went off when they said that primarily Steep Hill, Arkansas,
it is really difficult to hear you right now, just to be clear, but you're spilling the tea, but it's breaking up.
Like, very well are the people listed in the.
She's spilling the tea and it's breaking up. I think she's talking about Steep Hill, Arkansas, and Steep Hill is a very, very large live brand. It has been a definite day for ICE and the internet over there. I'm hoping y'all can still hear me as I am still able to be broadcast. But girl, when you dropped the bomb about Steep Hill, the first thing I thought was Steep Hill from California. And instead, I guess it's the Arkansas group.
It is the Arkansas, but they are up under Steep Hill from California. and that basically, you know, they conspired against the consumers to inflate THC levels, saying that it was independently tested and these are like really what they are. And, you know, people buy and price their products based on THC levels.
Right. Right. I mean,
So
listen,
the
I'm
defendants
definitely
basically have a bunch of like telephone calls, emails showing that they were just like, yeah, you could put that on there, round up one.
wow. So they have the receipts as well of the communication. That is the like shadiest ish ever. And again, that's what you were talking about. Like, we're losing millions as consumers. First of all, can I just say, as a consumer, if you're still buying by the THC level, I need you to level up, okay? Because it is a whole different world in terms of cannabinoids and terpenes and chemical profiles as it pertains to what the plant can provide. It ain't all about the THC. And the reality is, I think a lot of consumers understand that, but we have a lot of CEOs who do not. They're coming in, reading their 2010 to 2018 various perspectives and thinking, oh, well, people are all into THC, not realizing like first movers and real trendsetters in the cannabis space have moved beyond the THC. So I'm not caring about whether that's 30%. As a matter of fact, I'm so skeptical now that as soon as I see that, I'm turned off from that brand. And so, yeah, I think Arkansas is just demonstrating that their medical market is behind. This is not even an adult use market, and they're trying to jack up the THC levels. It's based in bro science and not real science about what really is, medicinally helpful for patients and consumers. So, I mean, it's disappointing, but it's not surprising. And it's disappointing because I really have often referenced Steep Hill, because on their website, they provide a lot of education, real cannabis science. And to me, it's almost like a judge being corrupt, being able to be bribed. You're here supposed to be impartial, objective, ensuring that consumers are getting what they're supposed to be getting. That's part of the consumer protection model. But you're not impartial. You're getting slid money under the table. And what I don't understand is that the testing licensing model is typically not as arduous as the actual manufacturing cultivation model. So it's not like you need the coins like that. You can actually be most profitable in a testing model. But this is also why sometimes, not every government, I am a proponent of government testing facilities, because supposedly, and we know government can be corrupt too, that is a barrier to prevention in terms of the subjectivity at a percentage that happens with testing.
Anyway, I am going to, definitely chime in here and say that this is not something only happening in Arkansas. This is something happening in California. There is the Cannabis Industry Journal created their own in-house testing of over 150 randomly chosen products out of a dispensary, and they went and did their own independent testing, and they were saying that basically 87% of the samples failed their labels claim, whether we're talking about THC, whether we're talking about different pesticides that are found in the actual product, and that, it wasn't just your, oh, this is my craft cannabis or whatever. It was also the big brands. Now, we do know a lot of the big brands don't create their own cannabis, but everyone's getting cannabis from the same area, around the same thing. It is really just unfortunate, because California is also one of those states where you pay more based on how much THC is found. They also have in the article seeing that the concentrates THC testing is off as well. Even though they're saying that something is 86% or 88%, you're seeing it stagger from certain different levels of being a lot less. And that is also where price hits THC levels, especially in concentrate, because a lot of people are looking for concentrated THC. I don't know.
And if you're using concentrated THC, like tinctures, for example, on other things you may be making, you're already out the gate going to be improperly calculating your potency and dosage because they're not giving you the right information. Same thing happens with flower. If I'm getting flower and I'm getting the chemical profile with the flower, it's telling me how much cannabinoids I have, and I'm backing into that in an infusion. Even if the expectation is that I'm going to have some, losses of yield in the infusion, it's still the case that I start with that percentage. And so it's not just about I'm buying Fugazi, right? You told me 38%, even though I don't shop like that, and I am a little judgy about people who shop by THC level, but maybe I want the highest THC level because I'm about to make my own thing in an ardent, right? Maybe I'm going for it and I just want to get as much out of it, more bang for your buck. That is a thing. And it isn't necessarily because you want to smoke that. It's because you want to move it on to the next thing and, put higher milligrams in a particular edible or a particular concentrate.
People are actually using concentrate for that high THC level.
Yes, that's true
we
too.
do use it for medicine, but people also like to party with it. So if you're telling me I'm purchasing this very expensive concentrate for this much THC level, is actually not that. It could be anywhere from 10 to 30% less than what is claiming on its label. Oh, and by the way, the consumers eat that price, but so do the people that are purchasing it from the people that are manufacturing it and selling it in their dispensary. They're getting taxed on top of that THC level too on distribution. So, everyone is eating the millions except the big CEOs.
They eating it in a different way. It's definitely going into their pockets though. It just isn't in a punitive way. We're the ones getting the punitive damage of poor management and poor, I would say, regulatory facilitation, not enforcement, but facilitation of testing. I mean, there's still a lot of states that do not even require testing. And so it's become a whole game, right? It's become a whole con in markets where they're like, well, we got the real testing and you have a stamp of approval. And the other thing, when you don't have testing right, it bothers me as a person who has, a degree in molecular biology. It's like, this is part of the reason why we still talking bro science all the time. We are still faking and phoning through our science based activities. And testing is the number one science-based activity at the molecular and compound level, if you ask me, that is meant to, again, ensure that people are ingesting or putting on whatever that you say as a manufacturer is in that jar. And when I worked at Victoria's Secret, we did testing as well. We had to make sure things had solvent lists, like that they were down to certain parts per particle that you don't have in a particular product, and you don't pay under the table. That's not the activity. That's not the practice. When it's supposed to be third party, maybe yes, you might have a long-standing relationship with them.
They could just be like Johnson.
Go ahead.
They could just be like Johnson and Johnson and just pay the FDA to take their test that they created and make it the blanket test for everybody. That's basically what they did with talc with Johnson and Johnson, and then we found out that shit is real bad for us and that it's been in it the whole time. The whole talc free thing is a joke. So they're basically trying to do that with cannabis is what I'm trying to say. But the difference is that was the 1970s, this 2022, and we got the internet, boo, and we know that y'all are faking with these little lab tests, faking with how you even coming up with what the tests are and should be implemented, how much it should be priced. And I am getting to the point where I need everybody that is making laws and passing policy to stop passing policy based on THC levels. Okay, this is not alcohol, and just pass the policy based on what product you want on your shelves.
Yeah, I definitely think that adding a financial component to THC levels, which is where people, even in the federal government, think will curb the THC. It's like, bruh, like you're doing too much. We don't need all of that. You actually are only going to put pressure the opposite way. And we see what that looks like in the hemp world, where people are trying their best not to get over 0.3% because they'll have hot hemp. And in places like Indiana, it means it can be burnt and wasted. Talk about not environmentally sustainable at all, the way we're regulating. So I'm putting this on government to fix in a different way. We've got to facilitate loving the whole plant, not being THC obsessed, and public health education, a public education campaign in general would help. Maybe let's start with educating the CEOs of these companies and letting them know that consumers have moved past the THC level. We are smarter and we understand that there are other compounds, and we want to know what those are too, but we want to know the real number. And we want to know the real number because we making products from your stuff, and y'all starting point helps us, but also it helps me understand how much I need to take and ensure that I'm always going to have a good experience, which means I will go back and buy your product. It ain't rocket science. This is how consumer products work.
You would think it's rocket science how much these CEOs are getting paid to inflate and guesstimate how the market dynamics work.
Yes. On that note, I mean, I definitely appreciate you bringing all of the what the F to the table today for this episode. I mean, it really was a what the F episode.
Is what the F, y'all. Like
it is. It's like what the F internet, what the F audio. But you know what? The tea was hot, and it really is truly what the F cannabis. Like, why is it such a tale of two worlds? Why is it so clearly corrupt and focused on capitalism? And we have these like narratives that somehow we're changing the narrative, and sometimes it's days like this and I'm like, it don't feel like it. But I'm thankful for the work that I get to do with the city of Portland, and thankful for the opportunity to kind of get my therapy in here.
What the CEOs is getting paid, okay? More like, what the F, you making $500,000 and you got powdered weed on your shelves, or you done bought out every single cultivation license available in the state. Why are you making $500,000 a year?
How difficult is it to be number one in the state if you are the only one, or there's only three, or there's only six?
I'm just hoping that we hold their feet to the fire. I'm definitely not all. I do not be thirsty to shop the legal market. Okay, I don't want my money to go into them, and I'm definitely not tipping your bartenders. Okay.
Well, on that note, I definitely want to make sure people are following us and checking us out in the future. This has been a really, really interesting episode, like what the F ice. But yeah, definitely follow us.
I wanted a vacation this week.
Well, we don't take vacation. We're weekly episodes, so episodic. You have to join us every week. But if you didn't join us, you can follow us at _Blaze on IG. And of course, y'all gonna have to go back. I can already tell that folks need to binge because they trying to catch up, and you can binge us anytime on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you join us live, you get to sound off and be a part of the show. I definitely want to shout out to the people that bear with us today and join us today. Ice, tell people where to follow you.
You could try to follow me on Instagram at Cannabis Socialite.
I'm laughing because Ice decided to make her Instagram private. So good luck with your approval there. And me, I'm an open book. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Dasheeda Dawson. And of course, we are always at the Weed Head, where the Weed Head and Company, Dawson Sister, is always able to be found. Girl, we made it through today's episode, and we will see folks next week. It's good seeing you. I'm going to go enjoy the green and the sun, the golden sun of the Portland area.
Have fun. Bye.
Bye.